Ever feel like different generations just don't get each other? Certified coach, licensed therapist, and speaker Tess Brigham tackles the generational challenges shaping our personal and professional lives on The Gen Mess with Tess.
Hello, and welcome to The Gen Mess with Tess, where we're not just fixing the mess, we're figuring out how to live in it. I'm your host, Tess Brigham. So let's start making sense of the mess together. So in my last solo show, I talked about how work is psychological. And I want to talk today about how early career, when you're young and early in your career, it's super brutal. It's rough. And no one tells you how rough it's going to be and how much it's kind of going to mess with your head in a way, right? People tell you how to get the job. They tell you how to write a resume, how to interview, how to network, right? But no one sits you down and says, hey, just so you know, this next phase of your life is going to be psychologically brutal. And I don't mean this in a dramatic way. I mean this in a very real and honest way. Because early career is not just about learning how to do a job. It's about learning who you are while being evaluated in real time. And that combination is a lot. You're stepping into a world where suddenly everything feels like it matters, right? Your performance matters, your reputation matters, your income matters, your choices feel like they have long-term consequences. And at the exact same time, you don't know fully what you're doing yet. You don't know the rules. You don't know what's normal. You don't know what to expect. You don't even know what's a big deal and what's not a big deal. So you're constantly guessing. You're guessing on how to communicate. You're guessing on how to show up. You're guessing on how to be taken seriously. You're guessing on how much of yourself that you can really be. And while you're guessing all of these things, you're being watched. You're being evaluated. You're being compared and you're being judged. And that's a very intense psychological environment to be in. And most people internalize that experience in a very specific way. They don't think, wow, this is a hard environment. What they really think is, there's something wrong with me. I remember this so clearly when I first started working. And I assumed that if I felt anxious or overwhelmed or unsure, that meant I wasn't handling things very well, right? Because I looked around and thought, well, everyone else seems fine. They seem confident. They seem like they know what they're doing. So it must mean something about me that I'm struggling. And at that time, I just didn't have the language to say, oh, this environment is psychologically demanding. I just thought to myself, I need to do better or be better. And this is what I see over and over again with young people. They are incredibly hard on themselves, not because they actually lack ability, but because they're in an environment that constantly activates self-doubt. So let's talk about why. Early career is one of those times in your life where all these things are happening at once. You have high expectations and low control. You are being evaluated constantly, but you don't fully have or understand the criteria. You're trying to build confidence, but you don't have any evidence yet. And finally, you are trying to form an identity, but you're in environments that are shaping you in real time. And then on top of that, everyone's watching everyone else, right? So you're seeing what your peers are doing, who got the better job, who got promoted, who seems like they get it. And again, your brain does what it does, right? It builds a story. They're ahead. I'm behind. I'm the only one that feels this way, even if none of that is actually true. So here's the part that's not talked about enough. You're not just learning skills in early career. You're learning how to tolerate uncertainty, evaluation, and pressure. You're building a relationship with yourself under stress. And if nobody helps you understand what's happening, that relationship can become really critical. Because then you'll start to believe that your worth is tied into your performance. You start to believe that mistakes mean something about your intelligence or your potential. You start to believe that if you don't feel confident, it means you shouldn't be there. And that's not the truth. These are just simply psychological interpretations. And then we add something else that makes it even harder. You don't have a reference point yet. If something goes wrong, you don't know, is this normal? If your boss is unclear, you don't know, oh, is this just how workplaces are? If someone speaks to you in a way that feels off, or you don't know, is this okay or not? So again, you internalize, it must be me. And this is where I want to say something that I feel very, very strongly about. Just because you are early in your career does not mean that you should tolerate unhealthy or inappropriate behavior. We have normalized this way too much in the workplace. We've normalized leaders who can't regulate their emotions. We've normalized environments where people are afraid to ask questions. We've normalized yelling, dismissiveness, passive-aggressive communication, and calling it high standards. Or, this is my favorite, just the way it is. It's not. It's not. It should have never been, and it shouldn't be now, and it shouldn't be in the future. There are no excuses for yelling at someone at work. There are no excuses for a leader making their stresses their employees' problems because they don't know how to manage their own emotions. And you know what? We all call each other out when it comes to parenting. But we would never expect that in parenting. We work very hard as parents not to yell at our kids. So why are you yelling at your direct reports? You know, we would never say it's okay for a parent to take their frustration out on their child because they had a bad day. So why are we tolerating it at work? Why are we telling young people, no, this is part of the process, and saying, no, this is not okay. Now, this doesn't mean that every uncomfortable experience at work is actually toxic, because early career, it is uncomfortable and it's supposed to be. You are learning, you are stretching, you are growing. But there's a difference between discomfort that leads to growth and environments that erode your sense of self. And if you don't understand that difference, you will either tolerate too much or you will leave situations that will actually help you grow. So what do you do with all of this information? Well, first, normalize your experience. If you are feeling anxious or unsure, overwhelmed, feel like you're constantly questioning yourself, that does not mean that you're doing something wrong. It means that you're in one of the most psychologically demanding phases of your life. And it probably won't be the last. Second, you have to separate behavior from identity. Making a mistake does not mean you are a mistake. Not knowing something doesn't mean that you don't belong. Feeling unsure does not mean that you're not capable. It just means you're new, and that's it. And third, you start paying attention to your environment. Start to ask yourself some questions like, am I being given clear expectations? Do I feel safe asking questions here? How are mistakes treated? Do we see mistakes as part of the process or something to be punished? Because your experience at work is not just you, it's about the environment that you're in as well. And those of you who are listening, whether you're leaders, managers, parents, this is where you all come in, right? You cannot assume that young people will figure it out the way other generations did. Not because they're weaker, but because now we understand what's actually happening psychologically. And once you understand that, you have a responsibility to respond differently. You have the responsibility to create clarity, to communicate expectations, to regulate yourself, to not make your stress someone else's burden. Because early career is hard enough. And it doesn't need to be made harder by environments that lack awareness, right? Early career it's not just a professional transition, it's a psychological one. It is the moment where you are learning how to be in the world, how to see yourself, and how to handle pressure all at the same time. And if we start talking about it that way, we can actually support people going through it. Because right now, too many people are struggling in silence, thinking that they're the problem, when in reality, they're just responding exactly how a human being would in that environment. Well, thanks so much for listening to the Gen Mess with Tess. Remember, we're not just fixing the mess, we're learning how to live in it. Stay curious, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
You've been listening to the Gen Mess with Tess with your host, Tess Brigham. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to follow Tess Brigham on all social channels. To learn more about Tess's books, courses, or to have Tess speak to help clean up the Gen Mess at your organization, head on over to tessbrigham.com. Thanks for listening.